Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a while since I've done a live. I was away on vacation and now I'm back, finally in my routine again. And I am so excited to be back because I love doing these interviews. And often I'm here with an author panel. But today I have one of our experts from the Biz Book Pub Hub. And it's a great opportunity to get a little sense of why these people do the work they do with authors and what's their motivation and how do they support entrepreneurs becoming successful authors. So stick around as I formally introduce today's guest. I'm pleased to interview one of our Biz Book Pub Hub partners. Our hub partners are experts who support entrepreneurs along their author journey. What if writing a book wasn't just about getting published, but about becoming more of who you're meant to be? Today's guest has written over 20 books across fiction and nonfiction, taught hundreds of professionals how to write with purpose, and turned a lifelong love of storytelling into a business that helps experts finally bring their books to life. She's not your typical writing coach. With a Ph.D. in clinical psychology, decades of lived experience with ADHD, and a USA Today bestseller under her belt, she understands there's no one-size-fits-all method to writing a book that matters. Instead, she blends neuroscience, creativity, and gentle accountability to help authors conquer their inner critics, connect their message to their mission, and actually enjoy the process. She's the founder of Psych Up Academy, a thriving community for professionals who want to elevate their platform, grow their impact, and create something they're proud of without burning out or giving up. Please join me in welcoming Anne Bartolucci. Anne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Robbie. It's a pleasure.
You are super impressive on paper. I've known you now for quite a while, and I love writing these intros because I'm like, USA Today bestseller. That's awesome. Congratulations on all of your success. I don't know, though, the backstory of how you came to provide these services for authors. So what is the origin for this?
It was quite accidental, which I'm sure many of your guests have told you. I don't know that anybody grows up and says, like, okay, when I grow up, I want to be a writing coach. That's definitely not what happened to me. And I call myself a writing mentor because I feel, yeah, as you said in your beautiful intro, which by the way, I'm totally stealing. Yeah, that is, I do things a little bit differently. Well, let's go back a few years in time to 2020. It's the pandemic times, things are shutting down, and suddenly we can no longer be in person to do continuing education. And when you go through, I jokingly call it psychology school, that's not where the education ends. You have to have a certain number of continuing ed hours per year afterwards. Well, I have a friend, actually my business mentor, Rebecca Beaton, who owned the Knowledge Tree, which was a platform. Well, it became a platform at the time. It was a live business for continuing ed for mental health professionals. And so one day we're having, a virtual lunch like we were doing in 2020. And she's like, hey, I got a proposition for you. I'm like, okay, what? She says, well, we love your insomnia treatment course. What else do you want to teach for us? Because, we don't have to worry about booking hotel ballrooms. We don't have to worry about ridiculous charges for coffee. What would you like to teach? And so, since one of my genres is steampunk, and I've done a lot of fun research for those books, my first proposal was, hey, how about hysteria and the occult in Victorian times? We can do it around Halloween. It'll be great. And she said, okay, yes. And how about how to write a book? Because at that point, I'd had, that was pre-Fae Files. So, let's say 15 fiction, and I was working on my second nonfiction at the time. I was like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. Which is funny because, sometimes we don't know how much we know. You always hear you don't know what you don't know. Well, a lot of times people don't know what they know. And I was like, oh yeah, that'll be great. So I taught that first workshop for her along with Hysteria and the Occult in Victorian Times. Sadly, the history workshop only went off once, but the writing workshop ended up being several times. And out of that, of course, came people who wanted more help. So, okay, sure, I'll take you on as an individual client. Okay, sure, we can do a accountability group. Okay, sure, I'll help you with the publication process. And that's sort of how Psych Up Academy came to be.
This little piece thrown in about the steampunk and the history of the occult and hysteria and oh my gosh. I always say that we need to showcase more of our personality so people can connect with us, as opposed to just like compare like 5 writing coaches and imagine they're all the same and they're just like commodities. And clearly, like, you have a story, and you have like a background. And the fact that you had to do a little math just now, because since 2020, you've published how many more books?
Oh, so yes, 2020 was, well, I mean, what the heck else was I gonna do?
I don't
So
know. Yeah.
yeah, sitting right. So yeah, I published my Fae Files Urban Fantasy series, which has 6 books in it.
Wow. Since 2020. So I published 3 books since 2020, and I thought like, and that was not on purpose, like your series was. I once had someone introduce me virtually for a program, and they were talking about my 3rd book, and they were like, and he wrote 2 books during the pandemic. I think it was like 2023. And I went, what? Like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. So it is interesting, that piece you said about how we can't see from our lived experience just how knowledgeable we are on a topic that we have. I mean, you started out not knowing how to do certain things, but you've now done the book writing process so many times, and probably in so many different ways, that you now have that knowledge, but you had not thought to package that knowledge. I think that's really interesting. And you have this great mentor who's able to hold the mirror up and say, well, how about this? And I similarly had a mentor who was like, why are you not a book launch coach? And I mean, she had to ask me 3 times in 7 years before I finally was like, okay, let me look into that. How ready were you to try that? Was it because it was 2020 and everybody was sort of trying new things? Like, did you feel free to test things out? She had a platform, you had some content, you were like, all right, let's just try this out.
I believe that it was, from what I remember, I was fine doing the workshop. But as for taking on individual clients and then starting the consultation groups, there was a little bit more resistance to that. And it was also, okay, how do I want this to fit into my general ecosystem? And so I figured out a way that it could work financially, not be a lot of work for me at the time, which of course, now I've thrown all that out the window. But at the time it was, okay, let's just take this first step and see what happens.
Because you still have a practice, like you have a private practice, is that right?
I do.
So you're running, like, you're a clinician, you have a private practice. That's probably a like very full job. Writing is not a simple pastime. Writing is also an incredibly time intensive job, and you put out 6 books since 2020. So clearly you're doing that at quite the clip. So like, where is the space for all this? I could see why you would have some hesitancy, but I imagine, did it just sort of grow kind of slowly over time? And then you're like, well, now I have to make this into a more structured thing. But then it was almost too late, because like now you suddenly had another business. Like, did it sneak up on you a little bit that you had a whole nother business that you were adding?
I did. And I'm fortunate to be married to somebody who's good at holding up that mirror to me, because I'm someone who, given the absence of anything else to do, I will work. And I'm happy to do that. And for me, writing doesn't necessarily feel like work. It feels like play, because it's like, oh, let me figure out this puzzle. Let's be in the head of this character. I joke that sometimes it's a toss-up as to who is less cooperative on any given day, my characters or my patients. At least I don't have to argue with my characters about turning off their screens an hour before bedtime. So there's that. I'm the sleep psychologist, for those who don't know. And it definitely ended up being one of those things that just gradually developed over time. And as Psych Up Academy grew, I did scale back on my clinical work at my practice. And so at this point, I'm seeing or scheduling about half to 2/3 of the patients that I was. I had to go back to a little bit because my part-time contractor left. So, hey, any psychologists out there with experience in cognitive behavioral therapy, hit me up. I got a remote job for you.
Yeah. I love that you've designed your life. You are taking some control about how all these pieces fit in, not trying to do all of it, but trying to make all of it fit. But it also sounds like you're narrowly defining the kind of services you provide. It could be scope creep. So, it sounds like you initially were like, let me help you with some writing. And then it was like, we'll do an accountability group. But then did you also then end up in the publishing space? Like what lines did you put around, or boundaries did you put around this? And did that get out of hand and you had to pull it back, or are you happy how it grew? I mean, I've talked to a lot of writing coaches who are like, well, I kind of accidentally started a hybrid publishing company. And I'm like, oh, they're like, yeah, I really like the writing and editing part, like, so yeah, how are you structuring the business side of it for the work that you do with authors?
I would say that it is always a challenge to set those boundaries. So, for example, right now I am editing my second book this year that somebody's asked me to edit, and just because they were so nice about it and so sweet about it, and of course they paid me, so I'm always having. And then I'm like, no more editing after this. So yes, my job. I like to take people from idea, even if it's idea they think they might want to write a book, but they're not sure, to first draft, and then I like to hand them off. But yes, early on, I helped one of my people through the self-publishing process. I get questions about that all the time because, as you know, when you know the things, you can't help but let other people know the things. So, for example, yesterday I was on a networking call. Somebody has just released their book, and they said, okay, and I'm looking at distribution, so I'm about to upload it to Draft to Digital, which of course is an electronic book distributor. And so I go on LinkedIn and I see her book, and it's like now available in Kindle Unlimited. And so I shot her a private message, and I was like, honey, if you want to distribute to these other places, you have to wait until your book is out of KU. And that is, you have to actually go in and manually unclick the auto renew. She's like, oh, yeah, I was wondering about that. But, you see somebody about to step in a pit, you can't help but pull them back. And I think that's how that scope creep happens.
You and I are both educators at heart. I feel like once we know how to do something, even though maybe we learn through some trial and tribulation, then we're like, let me teach someone else. That piece you just said is actually never so concisely been brought up on this podcast, but it is so important. I actually now tell people to not even turn on Kindle Unlimited. The upsides do not outweigh the risks or downsides that I see. And I'm sure there are use cases where that's not true, but for the authors that I'm working with and for my own books, having the book in the Kindle library and being able to do like Kindle countdown deals, which are only good in the UK and US, not globally, like not being able to sell it or even give it away in other modes or mediums or formats or websites, like, and when you turn off that 90-day renewal, you still have to wait to the end of the 90-day period before you're out of that contract. It's not automatic. You can't like just stop it halfway through. So yeah, for those listening, there's two things I would say. And again, I'm not in the business of helping people publish books, but two things. One, I don't recommend signing up for Kindle Unlimited unless you have a use case that I can't think of right now. And two, don't use expanded distribution when you upload a KDP so that you can instead upload your book to someplace like Ingram Spark. I can't get into the details of that, but like these are things that people just don't know. And I didn't have a hybrid publisher when I got my first book in 2017 because I didn't have money for it. And then I didn't expect to do another book. Like that was it. I was a one and done. I was writing a book, because a speaker is supposed to have a book. And then I've since done 3 more books, and I have decided to self-publish all of them. The quality of the vendors have gotten better because I have more money for this process. But ultimately, there's these little tricks and like pitfalls and stumbling blocks that you have to know about. And that's one of the reasons I think I love that folks like you are part of the Biz Book Pub Hub, because you understand the purpose of these books is to help people grow their businesses. So you want to make sure they're not stepping in it. And that example you have is a good one. But that doesn't mean you want to be in charge of them getting published. And I love that you're drawing some lines about that. So let's get into more specifics. If someone comes to you, it sounds like you're open to this, and they're just ideating. They're just like dreaming it up. They're not quite sure. You're comfortable walking them through kind of a pros and cons list about, should they write a book? What's the topic? What's the purpose? How does it fit into the work? And are they mostly writing business books? Are they writing fiction books? Like I know you're very experienced in both types of genres, like, or whole range of genres. So what are your clients writing?
They are in the nonfiction space. And yes, I'm happy to take them from idea clarification on. And actually, I do offer a free 30-minute idea clarification session for people, just because, yeah, they need to know, first, do they have an idea that's specific enough for a book, or enough for a book generally? Because sometimes people have too big of an idea, sometimes they don't have enough of one. And so we can help them figure that one out. And I forgot the rest of the question.
Well, I mean, I think you answered it, which is just, how soon is too soon to reach out to you? And the answer is, it really isn't. Like, if you're like,
Yep.
it's always been on my bucket list to write a book. I mean, go talk to
Mhm.
Anna and see whether you've got something that you can focus on in the next 18 months. Like, maybe not
Mhm.
today, maybe you put it off a little bit because you have other projects or life happening. But that piece you just said about sometimes they have too much of a book, I can't think of the number of people, but it's happened a lot where, well, two things happen. One is they're writing kind of almost 2 or 3 books in one book. Because I don't always get to talk to people early in the process. I mean, I'm open to doing it as well. And I do have a 30-minute call and all that. But sometimes people have already been working on a book, and this book has become a behemoth, and I'm like, oh, and it's for executives. Do they have time to read a 600-page book? Like, is that something they're going to throw in their suitcase and like take on the plane? And the other thing, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. They're actually gearing up to write a book, but it's the second book they should write. Have you ever had that happen? Like, how do you see that playing out?
I've actually not seen that as much. My people tend to be in, yes, business, but more in the, okay, this is the thing that is underneath or that drives why I'm doing what I do. And for example, yeah, the one that I'm editing right now that he convinced me to is somebody's a dream coach, and so it's a book on following your dreams, and I'm really looking forward to it being out. But yeah, and a lot of people are in the self improvement and motivational and spiritual spaces. And so, sometimes it does happen that, okay, you need something before this, but that's something that they discover during the process. And I'm like, brilliant, series is where the monies are.
Yeah, because that's what I found. They're almost bored of the foundational content by now.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing they get excited about writing is like the stuff that's sort of more cutting edge in their mind. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
but your audience doesn't all know the foundational
Yeah.
stuff that you did in the last 10 years. And so, yeah, like I got the advice years ago, the best way to sell book 1 is to have books 2 and 3 come out. And you're a
Mm-hmm.
series, you're a person who gets that. And it's true in nonfiction as well as fiction. And I think, breaking up content to smaller books, it's been kind of a trend lately.
Mm-hmm.
Is smaller, more consumable books. I've seen that to be a trend. The other trend I've seen is people having longer and longer subtitles, and I'm guilty of this as
Mm-hmm.
well. I feel like the smaller the book, the longer the subtitle. Like maybe we're making up for it. We're like, we need you to know everything in the subtitle.
Oh, that's
Um,
funny.
so I'd love to hear a little bit of a client success story, like someone you got to work with. Maybe they weren't quite sure about the book at the beginning, and then they work with you, and then they're really happy with the outcome. The result is they have a book and they're really proud of it.
Yes, so the one that comes immediately to mind, just because I've been emailing back and forth with him, because he's given me a lovely testimonial, is Justin Rollins. He's an expert on helping people to bill according to value rather than according to time. And I honestly offered to edit the book because I was like, yeah, I want to read this one too. So it's going to be coming out in the second half of September. And as I was working with him, I found that, as with many people, it's, yeah, you have all of this knowledge in your head, but you need somebody to ask you the right questions to pull it out. And you also need somebody to help you with the structure that has both the book and the selling the book in mind from the very beginning, which is what I do. And so, yeah, he told me that I asked, really insightful questions that really helped him along with the process, helped him both with writing the book, then also positioning himself to publish the book. And I am not publishing his book for him. He has got somebody else for that. But he is Yeah, but he's really happy with it, and I can tell just how excited he is for it to finally be coming out. And this is something he's been wanting to do for years.
The reason I'm so excited that you're one of our Biz Book Pub Hub partners is because you are so grounded in guiding the author to create a book connected to a specific outcome
Mm-hmm.
and helping them think through, like, what is that outcome and how does this book help them get there, whatever that might be. And you're not like a one size fits all about, it has to be a bestseller or it has to be, I don't know, has to sell a million copies or whatever the metric that often authors come to you with their own
Mm-hmm.
wish list. But you're like, let's ground this in some reality. Like, tell me what you do and tell me how this is going to fit in. And I feel like that's something that everybody who's in the hub, who's one of our hub partners, they ask that question in the beginning of this process and then continue to kind of reflect back that as you continue. And those questions, it sounds like even when you're not taking on the editor role, you still, as the writing mentor, are asking the questions that shape a book to create the kind of arc that helps the reader. Like you are helping them do their best work as the author. And we're too
Mm-hmm.
close to it. I'll be very honest, like as a writer myself, and I don't even use that term very strongly. Like I'm like, I've published some books, but like writing is like that's like as an identity to me, it's like a thing you feel really confident in. And I'm like, I feel okay about it. Like I don't feel stressed about it anymore. Like I can do it, but it's a medium that you are really called to doing. And now you're able to guide other people and help them ask the right questions to get it out of their head. I mean, that is a real gift. And it's why people who are like, well, I'm going to just work on my first draft and then I'll go find someone. I'm like, okay. Or like, what would your argument be to that? Like, how would you guide someone to say, like, find a few writing coaches or writing mentors? Like, how do you make the case for that if someone's like, well, I'll just keep puttering along, I'll just get it out of my head? Like, what are the benefits of working with someone like you to get that idea out of their head?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is that when you're working with somebody, you only have to write the book once. Whereas if you are puttering through it, you are probably going to end up, well, let me write a little bit here and a little bit there. And I finished it, but it doesn't quite work. So let me go scrap it all and start over. So it is a big waste of time and effort to just putter your way through. I mean, some people can do it, sure. I mean, I did that with my nonfiction books, but then, I had all this other structure behind it. And, that's part of why I teach people according to fiction structure and the reader's journey, because, it makes it a lot more fun to write, that would be the other argument, which is that, okay, cool, call me when you get stuck. Call me when you hate that and everything you have ever written, because it will happen. And that's why you need somebody to help you through it. I mean, that happened with somebody in one of my current cohorts, which was, she's like, yeah, I'm putting together this book proposal for a publisher and I absolutely hate my book right now. And I'm like, what? That's what happens.
Yeah. I'm coaching someone as a business coaching arrangement, and a book is on her wish list. And partly why we're working together is to create space in her business for her to be able to work on the book. And we're finally getting to the point where she could start moving forward on it. And she starts dragging her feet. I was like, just set aside Wednesday afternoon, like block your calendar for 4 hours. And, if you have to, you could always like reach out to a client and do some follow-up, but like let that time be for you to work on this. And finally she was like, yeah, I honestly don't know if I want to even write this book now. Like suddenly when it was like a real thing. And we ultimately got to the point where she does have the money to hire a ghostwriter, and the idea of being interviewed and not just her staring at a keyboard, like I'm like, that's cool. Like, but she didn't know what that would look like. And I said, you don't know whether you want to be a ghostwriter. Maybe you just need the right kind of writing coach, because then they would give you, assignments, or, like do this next piece, or focus on just gathering stories, or find an example for here, or a quote for that. Like they would help direct the writing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I've never actually had, I have worked with some writing coaches just to, like in my first book, just to get into the rhythm of writing before I was
Mm-hmm.
actually writing my book. I just needed my, I'll tell you my angst. And I think people listening might understand it. My only writing before 2017 was academic.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't love my academic writing, and it
Mm-hmm.
felt very stilted. And then there was the pressure to always like find, a way to link every, I mean, I remember I had one essay that I wrote where every paragraph I put a reference note because I said, I have no original thought on this topic. So I must make sure that I give a reference for every paragraph because I'm afraid that I'm going to get called in for plagiarism. But I don't know
Mm-hmm.
anything about this topic before we started. So like clearly every idea came from somewhere. So it just was kind of stressful and it never read very well. It just felt not my way of speaking. And it was a breakthrough working with a writing coach to realize that I could write my first book, the way I spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And no one had ever told me that. I
Yep.
didn't know that was even a possibility. So I think my resistance was based on, this sort of academic history. And I think that's probably true for a lot of people. And a writing coach can help dispel some of that or give you another 6 ways forward. That's not just one way. Like, yeah, share,
Yep.
jump in.
Yeah. So typically, what stops people from starting their book, they've got 4, maybe 5 things that they're worried about. First, they're worried that their idea isn't original enough. They're worried that they're going to start and get stuck, and so they'll have wasted all kinds of time and effort. They're worried that nobody's going to want to read it. They're totally overwhelmed by the thought of publishing it. And then they're worried about if somebody reads it, that they're going to get negative feedback or some expert is going to come down from on high and turn them into a pile of ash with a lightning bolt from their finger. Did I get that right?
Yeah, and well, the other one I've heard is someone's going to steal my idea.
That too.
I
Although I
can't
hear
tell
that
anyone.
one more. Yeah, I hear that one more from people who are worried about submitting their ideas for publication, like if they're
Yeah.
doing book proposals or, in the fiction world, if you're trying to get a publisher, you have to turn in the whole book at once. And yeah, it's like, no, they're getting plenty of material from all places. They don't need to steal your ideas.
Well, yeah. And I think for a nonfiction author, particularly one who's writing a book related to a business speaking, coaching, consulting, like you should be well known for this topic before you're trying to write
Mm-hmm.
a book on it. So like, what are they stealing? Like you're already known for that
Mm.
topic. If you're not known, how do you know it works? Like how have you tested it?
Yeah.
Definitely run
Plus
into
both.
some resistance.
Yeah. Plus, you know what? If you think about it, both you and I could write books on writing, and they'd be completely different.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you're bringing your own alchemy of your
Right.
personality and your experiences and your education and your worldview. And so, yes, your idea is always going to be original, even if you're writing on something that's been written about a billion times before, like mindfulness, for example. And another thing I tell people is like, think about all of the books that you have on your favorite topic on your shelf right now. Like, I cannot even tell you how many books I have on, well, yeah, I'm a practicing witch. So let's say, on plant witchery, holy cow, I've got a ton. And they all have, there's a lot of overlapping info, but it's each author's take on it
Mm-hmm.
that makes it interesting and fun to read. I get something out of every one of them.
Yeah. You're dropping more breadcrumbs of why some people would want to work with you. I love this. On the Biz Book Pub Hub profile, and actually, I want you to go after this and double check that you have dropped all these breadcrumbs in your profile. I think this is what differentiates. I asked 3 questions, I believe, when we were first setting up these profiles for each partner.
Mm-hmm.
It was, who's your ideal client to work with? What differentiates you from other people who do a similar service? And the third was sort of a catch-all. What else should we know about you and your business? And I remember someone saying like, "Oh, can I mention that I'm, a yogi master or something?" And I was like, "Yeah," like
Mm-hmm.
because people would then feel more comfortable coming to you with a topic that's a little spiritual, a little woo, if you put that in
Mm-hmm.
there, right? Like, and someone else might be like, "Oh, I have a lot of experience with this particular subset of business." It's like, okay, well then put that in. So I again, like you said, even comparing two people who do a similar service, I think having that can call people to you. You have a lot of breadcrumbs in this call, so we'll put this whole interview on your profile. Speaking of the hub,
Awesome.
though, I'd love to hear about just your experience. You've been part of it for a long time now. I started this Biz Book Pub Hub because I was asking around trying to find a referral network for people who served authors who were writing a book to help them grow a business. At the time, I was calling them business authors, but I've expanded the definition because they're not all writing a business book, but they're all writing a book for a business purpose. And I just didn't find any kind of community like that. And it's something I wanted as an author and I wanted as a service provider. So, why are you part of this? What does it mean to you? What are the reasons that you have continued to be engaged and involved? Just kind of open-ended question there for you.
Gotcha. Well, I definitely became involved originally because I knew I just wanted to focus on this one piece. And yes, I needed people to send along to. And so through the Biz Book Pub Hub, I have definitely made a lot of really good connections. I have made referrals. And I've also, made some really good kind of colleague friends. I see them on networking and it's like, hi, how are you? It's great to see you. How are things going? Let's catch up. And it's also nice to just generally have a place to send people. So if somebody in a networking group that I'm in on their message board said, hey, I've got a client who's looking for a ghostwriter. I'm like, here, look in this place. They're all vetted. And it's a good place to go ahead and narrow down their search. And so it's also just an amazing resource for people. Have I gotten any clients directly? No. Maybe after today I will.
Yeah, I think the more this is one of the reasons I like interviewing the folks that on the hub, because the more I understand the nuance of what you do, all the breadcrumbs you've been offering, we can improve your profile. But also, like, I sort of serve like a concierge role, to understand, where people are connected. And I was just talking to Katie, who's a newer member, and she's an editor who really just wants to be an editor, similar, right? And I'm like, oh, well, you should be. And I was trying to help her figure out who to reach out to, because she initially reached out to a lot of people who come after the book exists, because she creates a resource packet for her authors to be like, what's next? But now she's got that developed pretty well. And so she's now like trying to figure out, well, who comes before her? And I was like, well, you want to talk to writing coaches and writing mentors who don't want to be doing all the other steps. And you also want to talk to these hybrid publishers and assisted self-publishers who might, like, not now in the second need an editor, but might suddenly need an editor, right? Or might need you for a particular project because of your expertise. And the more they know about you, the more likely that's going to happen. And so I think similarly, like, the more we understand the kind of books you're able to do when those come in, I mean, like, I'm just thinking of Ruth and Lil are two people who just have a ton of people contacting them all the time, but they like have certain books they would prefer to do, right? And then there are books that come to you and you're like, I mean, I can give you a quote, like, it's a different kind of energy around it. But if they know other people, similar to you being like, I don't want to do all the things, I think even they don't want to do all the things. And that's been actually an interesting kind of side benefit of this, has been all of us figuring out like what our lanes are and what we want to be known for. So yeah, we got to get you also probably to present at one of our community events as a way to highlight your process. So folks who are listening, every month I host a free virtual networking event. Every other month, it's for writers and authors to meet our hub partners. And then the opposite months, it's an event for aspiring and professional speakers. And so we just do a really fun free virtual networking event as a way to connect people and bring them into our process and what we do. I'd love to hear about your thoughts about metrics for success that authors either they focus on, and also what you think they should focus on. We touched on some of this earlier. They come in with their own preconceived notions of what success looks like. And then you're like, let's break that down a little bit. So when you're supporting an author and helping them sort of set up themselves for success, what metrics do you hope that they'll focus on? And like, which ones are you like, less of that and more of this?
The metrics that I'm hoping that they'll focus on is how can their book help them to spread their message to make the world a better place? So that's a big one. And It's because perhaps that one is, yes, it's idealistic, but is also perhaps a little bit more under your control. Because yeah, one thing that I've definitely learned in my time as an author, which, at this point I got my first book contract in 2013. And I'm both traditionally published and independently published. And yeah, you can only focus on putting out the best book possible. You cannot control if people read it. You cannot control if people like it or buy it. And yeah, sure, you can do certain things to try to manipulate algorithms and, get those little orange stickers on Amazon, which you and I are definitely on the same page about those, that they are brief and fleeting and meaningless because, let's be honest, everybody's an Amazon bestselling author at this point. And that's why I hold on to my USA Today bestseller.
Yes.
Yes, which was actually part of a group effort. It was a compilation book, but you know what? I worked my ass off for that one.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's really more like putting out the best book possible and thinking, okay, how can this help me in my business? How can this help me to get on stages? It's, more of those indirect things rather than the let me get the bestseller and let me get all the money.
Yeah, I think when people finally realize that they're not in the business of selling books, they're in business of selling their services. It feels like a mindset shift because they aren't thinking that at first. Even if I think back to my first book, like I was like, oh, I just need to have the book. I wasn't thinking about how to get it out into the world until I was like, oh, wait, this is a good book. And I was actually just talking to someone. The company that I worked with is still around. And I just talked to someone who has recently been working with them. And their pressure point is that you have to write a book in 90 days. Like that's their whole thing. And I think they probably keep some stats on how many of their students do that. And so she was working with them as a vendor, as a service provider, and was like, well, you would benefit from another round of edits. And they were like, no, I have to stick to the timeline. And it's like, well, then you're not following Anna's advice to like put out the best book. Like make sure that that's the ultimate goal, not some arbitrary timeline. And for me, I was able to resist that like 90-day thing and instead was like, okay, the book's going to happen. And now I'm going to spend 6 weeks creating a launch plan. And then I had this tremendous launch. My first book, I had 150 reviews within a week of my, like a week and a half of my book being published. So like I gave myself like 3 days to do the soft launch, which was awful. Now it's like 3 weeks. But I did it and they were like so amazed by my results. But I'm like, well, because I gave it the time it needed to do that part. Because I realized like it's more than just a book. So just generally advice, like are there certain questions that you pose to authors as you're helping them think through the merits of a book they're writing or how to approach it for a business asset? Like any advice that you might have that comes to mind for people writing a book to help them grow a business?
It's definitely, and yeah, I cover this in great detail in my Start Your Book Challenge. But it's figure out, really figure out who you're writing it for. Figure out, okay, what are the resources and the knowledge that you have that you can get access to quickly? So your expertise. And then also, what's making you excited about it? Because that is the piece that I think a lot of people miss. It's like if you're not excited about writing a book, it's going to come through. Well, I mean, your writing process is going to be miserable. And it's also going to come through in the book. People can tell when they read a book if the author really loves the topic.
That last piece. Oh, that is so good. I actually haven't heard someone articulate it like that. And that, if someone has that resistance, it's like, well, work on the resistance. Like maybe you're not writing the book you really should be writing. Maybe what is exciting you? Or maybe you should be doing a TEDx talk instead so you can reignite that spark. Like what do you have to do to kind of get that mojo back? But just trudging forward in a like kind of way, yeah, the end product's not going to be good. The whole experience is not going to be good, but the end product is not going to serve you.
Exactly. And that's the problem with it, write your book in X number of days, is like they're just taking away all of the necessary foundation parts. And so when I work with somebody, and at this point I'm doing mostly cohorts, And that's also so that they can start getting used to getting feedback and also get that encouragement that, hey, people are actually liking what I write. And so I'll start them off with an 8-week accelerator, which is 8 weeks to first chapter, book outline, and marketing plan. And so they have this amazing foundation going forward. They can then write a couple more chapters and they have the bones of a book proposal. And as a couple of my current students are going through right now, if they want to do independent publishing, they have a great roadmap going forward and a way to stay excited about it. And that's where I'm helping them base their nonfiction books on myth and fairy tale structure, because we're getting down to that. Yeah, there's the psychology part. These are the tales that we are hardwired to connect to, both as writers and as readers. And so I did this beta last fall, and it went so well. We got to the end of it and they were like, okay, how do we continue? And I'm like, okay, I got to come up with something else. So then my students go into a 6 to 12 month long program where they're with the same cohort generally. And they continue with a schedule of turning things in and reading each other's stuff, which keeps them going.
Yeah.
And keeps them accountable. And then they also get my feedback. And so, and of course this just started last fall, so they're not quite done yet, but by the time they get to developmental editors, like, they're going to be so easy to edit. It's going to be so nice for whoever gets them next.
I love this, and I appreciate you spelling out the steps there, because it breaks down this like mystery of how to go from a blank page to a book, right? It breaks it down. And you just dropped another breadcrumb around the structure matching, like you said, the fairy tale structure, like the things, the stories that are hardwired in us. And so as another, like for someone who's really feeling lost about how to convey their message, like this could be really intriguing. Like explore with Anna, how could your expertise be overlaid to this framework that you have? And the idea that in a short amount of time, you would have, a first chapter and an outline and a beginning of a marketing plan. I mean, that's enough to say, okay, this is happening, I can keep going, right? And then you can have more ongoing support. So I really love that. And I love the cohort model, because the worst thing I think an author can do is write entirely in secret. And no input, no feedback, just, squirreling away at 6 o'clock in the morning every day. And like, yeah, you're writing a book, but you have no idea whether it's a good book, whether it's the right book, whether people are going to understand the material. It's just, and it's often based in some kind of fear. But if you can do a cohort model, I mean, writing, like I dated someone who did an MFA while we were together, and all that feedback, she was like doing poetry, and people would stand up and like recite their poetry and then like get feedback from the room. And you learn real quick how to give feedback and how to take feedback. And I think you end up becoming better at the whole process, and more open, and the end product is better. So I love this cohort model. I'm curious, because I don't know, writing coaches do a lot of different models. So I don't know that this is the usual thing you would get. So it's good to know that you have that sort of built in.
Yeah, typically when I tell people about that, including publishing professionals, they tell me, oh my gosh, nobody's doing it this way.
Yeah.
And so this is one of those nice secret things. And this totally comes out of my fiction experience, because I have been part of we're kind of on hiatus right now, but I've been part of a fiction critique group for years, like over a decade. And so, definitely got a good idea of critique structure, what's useful, what's not useful.
Right.
And so, yeah, when people get feedback in my groups, it's very supportive and constructive feedback. Nobody is crying.
Yeah, I love this. And I hope people check out all the links in the show notes. Speaking of which, how can people find you and follow your work?
Yes, so the website is psychupacademy.com. Super easy. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find Psych Up Academy on Instagram. And I run free workshops. And so, yeah, follow me in those places so that you can find out when the next one is. I also run quarterly Start Your Book challenges, where we really go into those 3 elements, as well as publishing paths and ways to get out of your own way. And yeah, I'll be starting another cohort this autumn. So if you're interested, if you're like, I really wanted to start my book this year and haven't yet, this is the time to do it.
Well, I'm thrilled to know that you have all this in place. I talk to people who are just the beginning stages of a book, and I have that initial conversation, and then I have to send them off to folks like you to move forward, so that at some point in the future they get referred back to me, because I'm a launch person, right? You need a book. I can't help you. So we're going to put all these links in the show notes at bizbookpubhub.com. We've got your LinkedIn, psychupacademy.com. I also threw in the link to your fiction books, because I think people might have
Thank you.
some fun poking around and seeing what you created there. And of course, a link to your Hub profile. You're one of our founding Hub partners, so I'm thrilled to be able to feature your work there as well. And your Better Sleep for the Overachiever is the one we highlighted here. So let me know if there's other books you want to include. I love the crossover. You're keeping people up at night with these great fiction books. And then you're like, stop reading, go to bed.
Exactly. I know. Yeah, I like to say is it a conflict of interest or a diabolical business plan? Who knows?
It's both. I love it. So,
Yes.
folks, check out bizbookpubhub.com to get all the show notes from today, but from all the episodes that we've been releasing. We've got so much amazing content and resources over the last dozens of episodes. And of course, at bizbookpubhub.com, you'll meet other experts like myself and Anna, who support entrepreneurs through writing, editing, publishing, launching, and marketing their book. Every month, we host a free virtual networking event. 3 times a year, I organize a Kindle flash sale, and even more. You'll find lots of great information for authors and writers at bizbookpubhub.com. Thank you once again, Anna, for this amazing conversation.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.